Hey guys, just on the way home from the, here's my sweater jacket, my puffer jacket, sorry. That was the one where I put it on and wore it for like 40 minutes and I was sweating. That's my Foo Fighters t-shirt. I buy t-shirts when I go to concerts, so I unfortunately still don't have a Slipknot t-shirt. But I still believe in the sign thing, and people can say, oh, you know what, a real person, a real legend will learn the mistake once and not have to learn it again. And I say, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't mean when they're in the same situation or a similar situation that they don't have comforting things. Well, so today I said I was going to spend $20 at the fair thing, but then obviously all the rides when I went in there were not for adults, and well, still good for the families though. And I walked around and I was there, and I spent $10. It was a $2 entry and I spent $10 in there, so $12, and still had another $10, so still $2,000 in the savings. And the reason why I bought this and this is a treat, okay? Because one of my comforting mechanisms, and again, you should go watch this channel, I'm not saying the name, because I already know that I'm not made to be like famous, and I don't want people to follow my path. I want them to stay on their path, and I want them to be strong, and I want them to stay on their own purpose. But because your purpose is a contribution to the whole collective, right? Every single person's purpose. If one person is not following their purpose, that's one person's contribution to the overall of humanity that's missing. And I know I'm not called to be Mr. Popular. In the past, leaders used to tell me I felt like this passion from God or Holy Spirit or Spirit, whatever I called it at the time, and I would say things and I'd get in trouble. People would think that I was trying to take them off course or something. Now, when I was younger, I'd be saying, no, God told me this. No, God told me this. But now I'm older, I'm just like, I realize certain things. I never expected them to adapt. But I'm not Mr. Popular, but I put the info out there, and quite often, like, the things would happen. The things that I said would happen, like world events, the sports things that I prophesy, other things like this. This person is a really good person, but majority of the world doesn't understand him, so he's not going to be one to draw people to the youth group or the church or whatever, but he is essential to behind the scene type thing. But obviously you have to stay on your purpose. And so when all these things happened, they would tell me that it all happened, and then they said, and there was a couple of times they asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, well, how do you think it's going to be? How do you think you can use this situation to better advance what God's called you to do? And I'll say, well, I've already got these ideas. And they'll tell me, and they said, we told you that years ago. And I said, yeah. And so how does that? Because I don't know the answers for this, but how would you go about facing this situation in order to better advance the call that God has on your life, or the call that Spirit has on your life? Because I don't know what is the best answer, but I just saw these things were going to happen, and I was telling you, and you attacked me. Well, not attack, if it was, there was a couple of times they called me out in the middle of the church because they thought I was causing a scene or something, because I had spoken to them in private. But then after that, after those things actually happened in the church, and then there was all these things that they want to do. Okay, turn on power saving. Portable charger. Portable charger getting stuck in. See? And then they reminded me of those things, and I was like, well, guess what? I don't know what you should do, but the guys put it on your heart, so you should trust your intuition. And there's other, I know what the incentives of these people are, or, you know, this group or whoever. So that's really, I mean, I wanted to be popular, but what's made it easy for me to handle the results I've been getting on here is the fact that that's been the story of my life. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, and then I see certain channels talking about topics, and that's okay. Sometimes they don't say my name, but because they view it that I might be trying to, you know, up my profile or something. But they talk about something I talked about, but they have their own lens, and then they talk about what they were out to do and all this type of thing, which was definitely not what I expected, but that's my purpose, you know. And I guess that links in with my name, Daniel, I suppose. You know, Daniel wasn't known by the public. He wasn't really like Mr. Popular. I mean, he would give his advice to the king, and he'd give his advice to the authorities, and so he was like a wise man, but he wasn't like one to draw the crowds, you know. Remember when his friends were worshipping, they chose not to bow down to Nebuchadnezzar. No one else listened to their influence. So he, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and there's Daniel, no one else were listening to them. The only ones that ended up listening to them was like the king, right? The general public and everybody else was not listening. And even then, when the king answered, it was something that that he could be made aware of. He can put into his back pocket for his use to see how he would handle the situation best, of how the king would handle the situation best. It's not to go off because that was Daniel's purpose. It wasn't, you know, that was Daniel's purpose. So the king wouldn't go out of the way to do the purpose of Daniel, because then it would be pointless, because the king's purpose was to be the king and to make the decision as that for the general public, make the decision for the empire, for the kingdom, you know what I mean? Wow. So, signs of my breakthrough. It's like this in my 20s, but I'm like, man, I hope I don't get the same breakthroughs in this that I got in the 20s, but all good breakthroughs now are then, but I wouldn't really, you know, now. Because, yeah, I mean, I used to go to parties, and we used to have talent quests at the church, and people used to sing my songs at the church, and I thought, man, you know, God's called me to do this. You know, there'll be like 4 or 5 songs that the church would know that I writ and made, and then there'll be all these other ones that my friends knew. And I thought, this is it. Like, you know, I go to rugby parties and people will play at least 3 of my songs at a party. If it was there for like 5 hours, you probably hear about 3 of my songs. But it didn't end up working out. And I ended up being unemployed, and I got my bachelor's degree in Māori studies and National Civic and Youth Studies bachelor's degree whilst I was still doing the music stuff. But none of that worked out, and I got a big breakthrough, ended up getting minimum pay rate jobs. But I did a whole ton of healing throughout that decade. Did the best with what I knew. My refrigerator gave way. You know, my chair gave way. You know, it's just like my emotions, they change.